This episode is brought to you in part by my loyal patrons. If you've ever wanted to directly support your favorite creative, then patreon.com is the place for you. I consider my patrons to be my small army of support, especially when I'm in need of extra bravery to keep doing what I do. Patreon has a very attainable mission to help every creator become sustainable. And for that, creatives everywhere are so grateful. You're listening to Bare Naked Bravery, a weekly podcast hosted by me, Emily Ann Peterson. This is the place where we expose the threads of heroism that stitch together the stories we admire most. As a musician, singer-songwriter, author, teaching artist, and business owner, I encounter some really fascinating stories. Every episode you'll hear features a revealing conversation with someone who courageously pours themselves out into the world. We'll talk about fears befriended, the terrors battled, and the courage created along our stories of bravery, quiet heroism, and all-out gutsiness. We open the Pandora's box of the dream-crushing constraints we all face during significant moments of bravery. These moments of bare naked bravery are rarely censored in real life, so if you're listening with little ears nearby, please know that some episodes may contain mature language and subject matter. The questions I ask today aren't scripted because I'm just curious. What is bravery? My hope for us all is that by listening to others search for and find their bravery, we will find our own. For that is what we need most, to know that we are not alone. The best way you can support the show is to share it with a friend or two. Send them an email, text, or tweet. Tag them in one of my Instagram posts. My handle's Emily Ann Pete. Or leave us a review on iTunes. It takes seconds and can be done from your phone right now. Bottom line, we need more bravery in the world. So let's be brave together. Oh my gosh, you guys are in for a treat today because we have Hal Grossman with us today. Hal and I know each other. We talk about this in the episode, but he and I know each other through the Marrowstone Summer Music Festival, which is a 2-week camp that the Seattle Youth Symphony puts on up in Bellingham, Washington. So Hal and I know each other because we were staff and faculty on this awesome camp. And Hal is a supremely expert violin teacher. He is a pedagogue, for those of you. He's a teacher of teachers and an excellent teacher to his own students. And I have witnessed it myself, and I've also heard from so many of his students how wonderfully he teaches. So we are in for such a treat today. We'll talk about his new teaching method, which he's putting together right now. We'll talk about performance anxiety and how having a lack of focus can affect our breathing and body movement, and how we can reverse that so that we can play and perform like we want to. We also ended up talking about worry and the anticipation being misguided. We talk about high standards. We talk about what it's like to feel out of your depth and how to have that give and take from your audience as a performer, as a musician. And again, anytime we have these conversations where we're talking about music or a specific application of bravery, I want you to keep listening and see what you pick up for your own life, because just because we're talking about the violin or music or classical music doesn't mean it doesn't apply to you. It actually really does apply to you. You're gonna love Hal as much as I do by the end of this episode. Let's get on into it. Are you ready for some bare naked bravery?
I'm completely ready for some bare naked bravery.
Yes, let's get naked. So
I love when people say that to me.
Me too. Me too. Okay, Hal, you are here because I know you because we were in the Marrowstone Summer Music Festival in Bellingham, Washington
Yes.
this past summer, and it was fantastic.
Yes, always is.
That place is, so for those of you that don't know, it's a high-end, high intensity summer music camp for classical music students who are in high school all the way up through graduate school. And it's just a lot of really engaged students coming together to do what they do really well. And I don't know about you, Hal, but I love just witnessing people in their element.
You're right.
It's the coolest. It's the coolest thing.
It is. It's interesting. I was talking to someone about Marrowstone the other day, and I teach at several camps in the summer, and I've been going to Marrowstone for quite some time. And the thing about Marrowstone is that the energy level is so high there, and sort of everyone is excited and they're just so glad to be there. And they're so glad there's such high energy about the music making. I would say more than at other places that I've taught at. And, for me, it's fantastic to be around that kind of energy.
What I like about it is that there's definitely this high level of competition happening just because of just the sheer nature of excellence that you're dealing with.
Right.
But what I appreciate about it is that it's almost like a lot of, not everyone, but a lot of the students have busted through that egotistical competition, and they're just playing for the excellence of art.
Right. And I think that, that's exactly true. And because there's so many concerts, there's a lot of music to prepare in not a huge amount of time. I think there's not tons of time for that ego to get involved. And the program and the conductors, they really center it around getting that music learned and getting it to a high level. And I think that sort of gets rid of some of that crazy musician competitiveness.
Totally. Plus, the faculty is pretty great.
So great.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about, you are a violinist.
Yes.
And I imagine you started very, very young.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, in the general sense, how young were you when you started?
So I actually started on the piano when I was 2 years old. And I did that for a really long time. And then I started playing the violin in I guess I was 8 or something like that, which is not super young nowadays, but then it was kind of the norm. But it was having those years of piano background that were really great for me. And my grandmother played the piano, so it was fun to go to my grandmother's house and we would play the piano together.
That's precious. Imagining a 2-year-old Hal is just...
It's too adorable, right?
It is.
I
know. So why are you in music professionally right now?
Oh, I always knew I was going to do this. It wasn't really a question. I think I was always focused, even at that young age. It just was something that spoke to me, and I just kept pursuing it, and things were going in the right direction, and there wasn't really a question that I would do something else. Plus, I'm not that bright, so it was really hard to go into another field. But no.
Well, I would say, I think it's funny. We don't often have to make these huge statements of calling and vocation, because sometimes we just keep walking through the doors that are open.
Right. That's true.
And then end up in a room where we're like, oh, cool.
Yes, that's very true. But I also think that professional musicians, people that have been doing this for a long time, they've always known. So, I mean, I think that's the difference about our profession, that people do know when they're young, I think. And then, sometimes life gets in the way. Sometimes people will take a detour, but there's that passion and that that intrigue, I think at a young age, I think speaks volumes.
Yeah.
I mean, I've certainly found in my teaching now, too, that some students think, well, I don't know if I should do this or something. And gosh, so many times they come back to it later in life.
Yeah. It's a skill that gives back to you, whether you use it all the time or just for a period of time.
Right.
Right now you're teaching privately, like individual one-on-one students, right?
Well,
For the most part.
We call it applied teaching.
Yes.
Because I'm employed.
And then this is touche. So, but you also have this method, the Hal Grossman Method.
The Grossman Method, yeah.
It's just so cool. Without sounding rude, what gives you the right to start your own method?
Just because I'm that kind of guy. No,
I only phrased it that way because I knew you could handle it.
I totally handle it. I love that you said it that way. Okay, well, let me tell you a little bit about it. The reason why I feel like I can do this is because I've been teaching forever, but I taught at a high level boarding school for high school musicians for almost 2 decades. And seeing a very high talent level and a high achievement level and a high academic level, I think puts me in a unique spot. And that coupled with sort of my just general interest in healthy playing and healthy musicians, I think that's what gives me the right to do it.
And what were you drawn to? Like, why didn't you just modify something else that already existed? Like, why did you start your own thing? Because that's rare.
I don't feel like there actually is something that is addressing what I feel needs to be addressed in the applied lesson situation. So that's why I did it. I mean, listen, Emily Ann, to be honest with you, I started this to help my students get through some pain issues and to get through some performance anxiety issues and all that. And it's just sort of blossomed and developed. I guess in the fairly early stages, I knew there was another way to teach, but now I know what that other way is.
For someone who has never received a private music lesson, what is the difference between the Grossman Method and anybody else?
Well, the Grossman Method formalizes how a teacher gives a private lesson. And within that lesson format, there is a lot of that work is somatically based. How to use the body in an aligned and proper fashion so as to avoid injury. And then to take that through the regular kind of teaching that anybody would do, whether you're a Suzuki teacher or a traditional teacher. And then the key element is the reflection time or the quiet time that needs to be built into the lesson as sort of a review of what's happening.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's about to be written. And so I am excited to bring it to everyone once it's written.
I know, it's so cool. Right now. It's so cool to see it in its like fetus.
No, it's in embryonic stage. No. Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk performance anxiety.
Okay.
Do you have it or have you had it?
I feel like, knock wood, I have my performance anxiety fairly under control at this point in my life. I have suffered from a little bit of shakiness. I would say the bigger thing would be lack of focus. I think I went through a period of lack of focus because I was more worried about things that I shouldn't have been worried about. But I think any performer, unless they've been performing an awful lot or they don't have anything to say, has a little bit of performance anxiety. So I just think it's human nature. It's a question of channeling that energy properly so that it does not become a problem, but it actually can be a help.
Which is something that is in my book about using your fear as a tool rather than viewing it as something that needs to be fought.
Exactly. Right. It's not a negative, actually. It's not only a positive, but I think it's essential. It's just a question that we have to learn how to channel it properly. And I'm not sure enough people are addressing it in that manner.
And how do you teach your students to channel it?
That's where the Grossman Method comes in.
You got me.
It shall all be revealed.
Well, I mean, I know I deal with performance anxiety just because I have social anxiety. The performance aspect is fine, but the social anxiety ends up becoming more of a big deal, or more of, it's not a big deal. It's just a definite elephant that is in the room.
Mm-hmm.
And there needs to be enough space in the room for that elephant. Otherwise, I don't show up.
That's I gotcha. Well, I mean, I didn't mean to be so quick on my answer earlier about the Grossman Method. We incorporate things like breathing techniques, and a little bit of physical movement can work wonders. I have gone backstage when my students are performing recitals, for example. I've gone backstage at intermission, and we go through some body work, and it can completely calm people down. I've done it myself. And that's the kind of thing that I just think what I'm doing is giving a structured way for other teachers to use that, so that it's not just at that time where the kid is on stage, or, the 3 days getting ready for the concerto or something like that. But it's sort of part of the teaching method. And I think with ongoing training, I've been doing it, so I've been testing it and all that. With ongoing training like that, it can have pretty profound effects, I'm finding.
Like what?
Like, probably one of my most interesting cases is a student who came to me pretty injured, hadn't played for a couple of years, as a matter of fact. Partly performance anxiety, but partly for other physical issues related to the violin. And having taken that person through the method for a solid academic year, that person's playing now, winning competitions, playing at the top of that person's game. I mean, it's great. That's an extreme example, but I've had other students who have had minor, less major arm problems or neck problems or something like that. And, we've been able to get through that and calm it down so that people are playing at the best of their abilities.
That's really great.
I think one thing that's been really fun about this is that I've had students say to me, when I've played before, when I've been in a performance situation, I'm so worried that my body is going to hurt, or I'm so worried that my bow arm is going to freeze up or something like that, that I can't really enjoy playing. And so the method has been a way to stop all that, and so that they can so that we can all get back to playing the music at hand, which is why we're doing this in the first place.
Yeah, worry is a slippery slope.
Yeah.
How has worry shown up in a lesson, or in, let's just use your own career?
Sure.
Because I know, I believe that I teach out of my own experience, whether I want to or not. Some days I have to take my own advice.
Oh, totally.
But how has the worry shown up in your life?
How much time do you have? No. Let's see. Specifically as it relates to my playing, or
your career, or any other, like relationships or playing, or your education?
Well, I think it's a really great question. I think that worry, I anticipate something is going to happen when it may or may not happen. I assume something is going to go wrong. Particularly when I was younger, I would fret that something would go wrong in a concert, let's say, or something. Like, I would not hit that passage correctly or hit that note correctly. And what I've learned over the time is you can't do that. I mean, living in the present moment makes a really big difference. And sort of knowing what happens when, like what physically happens to a person when they start that worry or something, the shallow breathing and the body tightening up and all that. Yeah, if you know that you're going to do that and you have some tools to counteract that, it can stop it, I think.
I agree. I've experienced that for sure.
Yeah.
I really think that worry is misguided anticipation. And the
Yes.
anticipation itself is not bad or wrong.
Right.
It's just up to us to deflect it into the right direction.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes we lose focus. Gee, I was teaching a lesson today. And this sort of came up when we're so worried about what other people are thinking or how the external world is viewing us or something like that. I mean, you have a choice to either buy into that or not buy into that. And that's why I think it's important to teach appropriately and use the Grossman method.
I'm sensing a theme here.
Are you hearing that? Are you hearing that? Yeah.
Before we get back to the conversation, I have just got to tell you about this awesome group of people I am honored to call my patrons. Every time a new song of mine is born, the first recording of it is tenderly revealed to this devoted group. They get to hear all my new material in its raw, fresh, vulnerable state and know that they are helping me do what I do. Because at the end of the day, they just want me to keep doing what I'm doing, and any reminder of that completely floors me every time I think about it. All of this support occurs through a website called patreon.com, which was started by this guy named Jack Conti, whose very attainable mission is to help every creator achieve sustainable income. In a world where artists are seen scrambling for pennies squeezed out of an expiring and broken economic system, the folks at Patreon have brought us back to what all creators used to do. Patronage is not new. But unlike a lot of popular crowdfunding sites out there, Patreon enables creators to receive support on a regular basis. The great thing is that my patrons set their pledges to whatever amount they feel comfortable with, which means patronage fits every budget out there. And of course, you can cancel at any time. If you're a creative type who's interested in joining Patreon yourself, I'd be happy to answer any questions I can. Just shoot me an email anytime. Bottom line, my patrons help me do everything I do, but better and more frequently. If you're interested in becoming a patron of mine, go to barenakedbravery.com/Patreon, Patreon.
The high expectations of classical music is a lot of pressure. And I mean, we can go back to Marrowstone. My role at Marrowstone, you were one of the amazing faculty members, and I was one of the amazing staff members.
Totally.
My role was student liaison, and part of that role was talking people down from a panic attack or quitting the whole camp or dropping out of the classes or, giving up or whatever. They'd come into the office and go like, is Emily here?
Yeah.
And actually I loved the role because we were using all of this stuff. Like, okay, let's focus back in on why are you here? Because are you here to be the best one? No. Then maybe you shouldn't quit just because you're not the best one.
Right.
Or on the verge of a panic attack. Okay, let's calm the breath down. Let's color some pages. Let's it's true. Coloring is really relaxing because it focuses you on the thing. It guides that anticipation back into something that doesn't matter.
Right. Yeah. That's pretty interesting.
I know. Well,
Yeah.
I mentioned that because the environment was so high standard. The standards were so high.
Right.
And the environment had so many high expectations. and hopes and dreams, and the people around the students are all just really good and everyone knows it.
Right.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. I think the great things about being a musician, I mean, whether you're a classical musician or a jazz musician, is the collaboration and the interactive thing. Yet, I think, especially for young people, when you're thrown into a situation where you're out of your element, when you're away from your friends or you're surrounded by a bunch of people that you've never seen before who really play super strong, I mean, sure, although it's self-doubt business comes up, it's like, oh, maybe I'm not as great as I thought I was or something. And I certainly, I taught at Interlochen Arts Academy for a really long time. And certainly I saw that on a yearly basis. These kids would come from all over the world, really. And kids would come in thinking they were hot dogs from here, there, the other place. And within the first week, they were like, what is happening here? You'd get these kids from Russia or kids from China or kids from New York or something. And the poor thing from a tiny town somewhere was a little overwhelming. But kids are really resilient. And if you can learn from each other. And that's what's the great thing about Maristone, too, is because there's so little time and there's so much to do that you can only fuss about that for so long.
There is literally no time to have a panic attack.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's the good thing about music.
You have to squeeze it into 5 minutes if you're going to choose to do that.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
So in some cases, like the hustle can be a blessing because it is guiding that anticipation in the right direction.
Right.
But it's exhausting and it's not something that is, I think that, that capacity, I should say, that's not sustainable.
Right. I mean,
which is why it's a 2-week camp.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, exactly. But, I mean, I think all professional musicians have had that kind of experience at some point, like even in their early professional life. I know I did. I remember very well playing in a chamber music concert with a bunch of famous people. And yeah, I was completely nervous, but there was no time to indulge in that, and it turns out to be one of the greatest things I ever did. But
do you have any other examples of moments in your life where you've felt out of your depth?
Yes.
Would you care to elaborate?
Sure. Because this podcast is about bravery, so I get to be real brave now.
Just so you guys know, Hal is blushing right now. And it's precious.
Oh, stop it. Let's see. I remember once, I don't know how much.
You can leave out names for sure.
Yeah, I think I have to leave out names. But it was kind of a last minute thing, and I was thrown into a pretty high level group of people, and we had like 4 days to get a concert ready. And I might have been the youngest person there, but I certainly didn't know any of these people. And I was pretty intimidated when I first started to play, and then I hit a clunker and we stopped and I panicked and froze. And after I got out, I did one of my things, and then we started up again, and everything was fine after that. But yeah, boy, well, I think
That's what I refer to as the pancake.
How's that?
The sacrificial pancake.
Oh yeah, yeah, exactly. I know, it's like I had to get it out of my system or something like that, I'll tell you how old I was when that happened. I was 23 years old. I remember that. Yeah, it was horrible.
Oh yeah. I had a sacrificial pancake concert. It was the whole deal. And I mean, part of the physical capacity that my diagnosis of my tremor in my hand, application wise, that means that, and I learned this during the first concert of this tour I did in West Coast. And if Tim is listening, He's probably nodding his head. He graciously hosted a house concert, and it was really great, full of wonderful, warm people. But I carried my massive Roland stage keyboard for a block, like
Wow.
15 minutes before I started playing.
Yeah.
And that just really overstrained my hand, means that it was shaking too much. And then it was just a downward spiral from there. So it was just, I got in my head. And then the way that works with my tremor is that when I get in my head, the tremor gets worse, which then gets me in my head, and then my tremor gets worse and worse. And so it took a good 24 hours to shake off that sacrificial pancake. Because I woke up the next day and was just like, I don't know if I'm cut out for this. Maybe I'm done. Truly.
A little dramatic, but okay. Yeah, I'll go with you on that
I'm glad you think so, but it definitely was what it was going through my head was like.
Okay, but let me talk to you about something.
Please.
Because here's the deal. Here's what I learned. Okay, so, I took a year off and I went and studied biomechanics and anatomy and stuff like that. I actually went back to college and took a bunch of college classes. This is like, what? This is like 9 years ago or something like that, right? And so I ended up working with a bunch of sports guys. And I found out that I couldn't believe the resources those sports guys have, like, football players, for example. Like, if they get injured on the field, like if they sprain their ankle or something, they are immediately whisked off into these high technology rehab facilities, like the minute it happens. And so, you're telling me this story and I'm thinking to myself, boy, really musicians, wouldn't it be great if someone had like taken you right into some rehab thing and put ice on you or whatever it was that you needed? And we don't have those kinds of resources.
Yes, we do. We have the green room and the bathroom.
Yeah. Thank you.
Which is what I did after that show. Like, I took a beeline to the bathroom and just like breathed myself through being okay with like showing my face again.
Absolutely. And I get that, but wouldn't it be great if you had your coach there with you?
Oh yeah, it would have been fantastic.
Yeah. This is what I learned. So it's just amazing. And the other thing is that what I also learned is that those guys have from the get-go, like if you talk to high school sports guys, they have some general understanding of anatomy and how their muscles are used and stuff like that. But musicians don't have that information, that training, but I think that they should. And I think that, I know, here I am going back to my thing again, right? But it's just because it's my passion.
It's why it's called the Grossman Method.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, I think that especially nowadays, students totally need some of that information. They need to know, like, when their backs hurt, like what part of your back hurts, I give this workshop, this stretch class for musicians. I've given it at Maristone several times and all that, and it's super fun and everything. And a part of the reason that course has developed is because for years, students would come in or something and they would say, yeah, my neck hurts or my back hurts. And you're like, the back is this huge area on your body. Like, what part of your back? And they wouldn't know. And so what's been super fun now in my work is that now students can say to me, you know what, I think it's my traps. There's something around my traps or my levators or something like that, which that makes it so much easier for me to work through that, But anyway, I just think musicians they just need that kind of information now, so that stuff like that doesn't happen to you. If you do stuff like that, at least or you lift in a certain way or something.
In some cases, I think musicians are more race car drivers than mechanics.
Totally.
And I wish that my own teachers had done more mechanic instruction.
Right.
And this is how you drive the race car really fast.
Right, exactly. I feel like, especially now, like students who are high school years and early college years in particular, they're so online all the time. They're overstimulated visually, but physically they're not. And I also feel like they're a little bit out of touch with their bodies. And so they're trying to work in an art form that sort of demands that you feel your body and feel your emotions and stuff like that. And I feel like we have to address that, or the future of classical music is not where we want it to be. I just don't feel like you can teach the same way right now that you were taught or I was taught back in the day, because I just think the social demands on students right now have changed that. And that's what I'm trying to address.
Which is really admirable. Let me just say, my favorite thing to do before I go onto the stage, especially for an orchestra concert, is I imagine above everyone's head, like as we're tuning, this is what's happening in my mind as everyone's tuning. Everyone's doing the 80s. It's the weird sound that one of my friend's daughters said, I really like that song at the beginning they play.
Oh, that's adorable.
Isn't that cute?
Yeah, I like that.
So during that song, in my head, what's happening is above everyone else's head, I'm imagining all of the tree of teachers that it took to get that student or that person in that chair. And
wow.
I know.
That's so lovely.
It'll blow your mind, because if you think about it, like I had, let's say, I've got like 5 to 7 like teachers that I've said were my teachers.
Yeah.
Each of them have had 5 or 7, and each of them have had like maybe 1 or 2. And you get to see that like teacher tree. And if you could just visualize that above everyone's head, it doesn't make it actually makes the first violinist seem less threatening as a cellist.
Wow.
Because you're able to see like the wide net of support that is represented on the stage.
I love that. That's so great.
Doesn't it make it seem, it makes it seem like so much less intimidating to start this piece and play it perfectly.
Yeah. I love that. Here's my thing.
Please.
Okay. I like the teacher tree, but for me, it's the exchange of the performer and the audience. And so I do this weird thing that I won't tell you about because it's too weird, maybe. But it's sort of an energy transference thing where you're as the performer, you're giving to the audience and then you're taking back from the audience. That's my latest thing. I don't know. It feels really good to do that.
I'm all about that.
Yeah.
I mean, it helps you read the room. Especially, the music that I'm playing is not like as fold your hands in your lap kind of music. So that reading the room is more important because I can know like, oh, well, the crowd's not ready for this next song yet. So let's keep the energy up a bit.
Yeah. But I have to tell you, there's something about playing for a classical audience, especially a middle-aged to older audience, when they are a little quiet and stuff, it can be rough unless you're feeling like it's a give and take kind of situation. I think I learned that a long time ago, but I know that my students even now tell me that like it just feels like there's a wall or something between the stage and the thing, and that is scary, and that has to be broken down. But everyone's different, right? I mean, you can just either keep it all to yourself and keep yourself all zhuzhed up or something like that, or you can embrace the entire room, which, is a bit of a feat, but it can make a huge difference, I find.
And to tie it all back and come full circle back to bravery, you can do the same thing when you're trying to be brave. Like you can be brave within yourself, or you can be brave externally and involve the vulnerability of other people in your experience. And I think that bringing that choice back into the moment is the thing that empowers us.
Oh, well, I mean, making that choice in the moment is the key, but it's so difficult. It's so difficult to take a breath for 1 second or half a second and say, wait a minute, I have a choice on how I'm going to react, or I'm going to take a breath for a second, or I am going to involve that other person or something like that. And yeah, I mean, easier said than done, but it can be done. And I think once you get the tools to do that, yeah, I mean, I think it affects every aspect of a person's life.
It's true.
Yeah.
Well, this has been fantastic.
You're so adorable.
You are too. And I want to have you back when your Grossman Method is out.
Okay, it's coming soon.
We'll talk about how brave it can be to do the big reveal. How about that?
Ooh, yeah, that's the trick. That's the trick.
I just love Hal so much. So much. And I hope you do too, just as much as I do. You can learn more about Hal and all of his things he's got going on. There are links in our show notes for this episode at barenakedbravery.com. And the brave takeaway from today's episode is actually a book list built by myself and Hal. It has stuff like the talent code and stuff from Dr. Suzuki and other wonderful pedagogues and teachers of teachers that you can glean some really fantastic advice from. Someday, my own book and Hal's book will be on that list, but for now, we would be happy to point you in the direction of our teachers and possibly their teachers as well. That's our show for this week. Thank you again for listening so much. Again and again, we've put the links in the show notes, so you can just go to barenakedbravery.com for all of that. And if you enjoyed listening to the episode, at the bottom of the show notes is a list of ways that you can help support the show. It doesn't cost money. It takes maybe a couple minutes, and it usually involves something like sharing the episode with a friend or two. So it's pretty easy, and it really does help us out, because the bravery that I talk about with my guests and the bravery that Hal talked about today, it's worth listening to and it's worth sharing, and a lot of people need to hear it. So you're a part of all of that. You're also a part of the Bare Naked Bravery coloring book, which is so freaking cool. It features 10 designs from 10 talented visual artists of all kinds from all over the world. And this means that you can make art from a fellow Bare Naked Bravery listener. You can make that art come to life while you listen to the show, or when you're backstage in the green room trying to distract yourself from all your performance anxiety. You can go download the coloring book by visiting barenakedbravery.com/color. And if you're digging the music in today's episode, that's because it's brought to you by my friends at Music Box Licensing, a premier creative music agency dedicated to finding and crafting unique soundtracks. To find out more about all the artists, musicians, and other sponsors of the show, please visit barenakedbravery.com/sponsors. Until next week, which is going to be awesome. Until then, I have one message for you. It's this: be yourself, be vulnerable, be brave, because the world needs more of your bare naked bravery.